Today's Transportation and Environment Committee session covering the FY22 operating budget and the FY21 to 26 CIP amendments. Today we'll cover 6 items in total, and I'll turn it to Dr. Orland to lead us through the packets in just a moment. I will note one change is that we want to move up the briefing on the WMATA budget because Mr. Goldman, our board representative, is here and available now. So I think we'll take that item first and move to the other ones after that. If that's okay with everybody. Mr. Goldman, are you prepared?
I am.
As always. Okay. Thank you so much for representing us on the WMATA board. You've had a very difficult and tumultuous year, and we're so glad to have your able and experienced leadership in that role, that thankless job. Anyway, just thank you for all your service, and please take it away.
Thank you very much. Greetings, Chairman Hucker, and I see Council Members Reamer and Glass. I don't know if any of your colleagues are also joining you, but that's what I see today. So I bring you greetings from the Metro Board and from the General Manager, Paul Wiedefeld. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Charlie Scott, from the WMATA staff. I can see him. I assume you can see him as well. He'll be assisting if some technical issues come up. We've had a wild ride in 2020 and 2021 since March of last year. If you can appreciate that kind of a bad transit metaphor or pun to get started, we have some slides to tell you where we've been and to bring you up to date on what the Metro budget looks like for fiscal year 22, which starts July 1, and bring you up to date on some of the projects going on in the county. And miraculously, the slides have appeared. Hopefully, Charlie is in control of them, and we'll go from one to another. And so if we could, there we go. It seems to be working as scheduled. So I'll go through these slides quickly because I noticed that they're very similar in the overlap with the background presentation that Glenn provided to you in your materials today as well. So we started the year in January with a proposed FY22 budget that assumed that even at the end of that period, June of next year, ridership would only be back at 34% of pre-pandemic levels. We expected at that point no new federal relief after Congress passed 2 installments, CARES Act and then the CARES Act 2. And we know that the jurisdictions are constrained in their ability to provide subsidy support. And therefore, we ended up with a budget with an operating gap of $209 million going into FY22, which provided for a fiscal cliff at the end of 21, going into January 2022. This was the so-called doomsday budget that would have provided in the first half of calendar 22 with 30-minute rail headways, closing of 22 stations, no weekend rail service, the return of the turnbacks on the Red Line, and the loss of 2,200 jobs from our WMATA employee group. That, of course, produced a record turnout of riders and stakeholders with feedback during our public hearing and public comment period in February and March. And lo and behold, the Biden administration and the federal government rode to the rescue, and the American Rescue Plan was signed into law in March 11th of this year, which provided $30.5 billion nationwide for transit and approximately $1 billion for WMATA. Next, please. So this is some highlights of what the budget now looks like for the year beginning July 1. We'll be able to maintain Metrobus and Metro Rail services for a full year at current levels. There'll be no rail station closures or turnbacks. We'll retain the collective bargaining agreement step-ups in increased wages and pay performance for our non-representative employee group. The Silver Line looks like phase 2 of the Silver Line will finally come into revenue service probably early in 2022, January or February. That's based on the Metropolitan Washington Airports Board current expectation to complete the project by Labor Day of this year, and then it comes over to WMATA for 3 months of running on non-revenue basis before we go into revenue service. And finally, the other highlight is this new Potomac Rail station, the station below National Airport, which will open in the fourth quarter of 2022. Next slide. So here's what you're looking at. So Metro Rail will roughly be operating at about 80% of pre-COVID level service, closing at 11 o'clock. Weekday service on most lines will be on 12-minute headways, but for the red line, it'll be 6-minute headways. In the evening, we'll revert to 20-minute headways on all lines, and on weekends, it'll be 15-minute headways on all lines except the red line, which will be at 12-minute headways. Bus is about 85% of pre-COVID levels. We'll have some late night services, and these are shown in greater detail on the next slide. Charlie, if you please. And so, as you can see, under Maryland, or where the Metro Bus so-called enhancements will occur, and a number of these are in Montgomery County, the F4, J2, the K6, the Y2, and the Z8 routes are all scheduled for enhancements starting as early as June of this year. Next slide, please. Now this is a very complicated slide, but I put it in here to show you a couple things. On the left-hand side of the chart is the pre-COVID fiscal year 1920 ridership pattern. And as you can see, we were going full guns there in the first 3 quarters with large increases in ridership on Metro Rail and Metro Bus. And as was the traditional pattern, the blue is Metro Rail. And of course, we're carrying more riders on Metro Rail than on Metro Bus. Now, if you look to the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see what we're projecting for FY22. And as I said before, for rail, we're at about 15% of pre-COVID ridership levels. And for bus, we're at about 45%. So as you see in the Q1 slide, the traditional pattern is reversed, and we're now carrying more riders on bus than on rail, 14.2 million projected versus 6.6 million. But as you can see, even once we get to the fourth quarter, we're still only anticipating that we'll be at 34% of pre-COVID ridership levels in the fourth quarter of next year. And so the impact of that on fare revenue, you can see on the extreme right-hand side, the lower level number, which is $169 million, which is the total amount that's forecast for rail ridership revenue for the coming fiscal year, as opposed to a traditional year when WMATA could expect to have about 700 or 800 million in rail ridership related revenue. Next slide, please. And so the bottom line on all this is really what this chart shows, that with 2 billion of operating costs projected for fiscal year FY22, we're only anticipating total revenues coming into the system of 237 million. So that's the 169 million of ridership revenues, plus another 70 million of assorted revenues coming from parking, advertising, joint development, and fiber optic cable licenses paid for by the cell phone operators to be able to have self-service in the system. And as you can see, the big chunk of the revenue for this fiscal year is going to come from the federal government in terms of the COVID relief, 723 million, and the jurisdictional subsidy payments, which are remaining constant at $1.1 billion. And so what's not said here, and before we leave the operating budget to look at the capital budget, is the issue of post-Labor Day rail fare incentives, rail fare reductions, in order to stimulate that return of people to rail after Labor Day. That's still an issue that the board will have to address in the coming months. Some of the ideas out there that I've been advancing with my colleagues is to suspend the so-called peak rail charges that we have, since we don't have any peak periods any longer in this system. And that would bring the maximum rail fare down from $6 to $3.85, ending the bus to rail transfer fee so that riders would just pay one fare, and encouraging them to transfer from bus to rail rather than staying on bus for their full itinerary, and reduced or free parking at metro garages and lots for some interim pilot period beginning in September. So again, those are all issues that the board will have to deal with it if it chooses to deal with providing some ridership incentives for the period after Labor Day. So that deals with the operating budget, and just quickly to tell you a little bit about the capital budget. Next one, please, Charlie. So on the extreme left, you can see where our capital budget is for this fiscal year. It'll be at $2.6 billion FY 2022. And as you can see, that capital budget declines somewhat over the next 6 years as some of the big programs underway are completed: the station rehabilitation program, rail car procurement, and the new bus garages that are currently under construction. But at least, as you can see on the right side, staff's view is that in the long term, the capital program will probably be coming in at about $2.4 billion on average for the post 2027 period. And that reflects the need for continued state of good repair programs, as well as things that are not in the capital budget now, but that everybody wants to see happen. Movement to zero emission bus fleets, the next generation signal system, so that the rail systems can go back to automatic train control rather than manual train control, and tunnel ventilation improvements, and things of that nature. Next, please. And so this is another way of looking at it, just a breakdown of the financial plan by investment category. Again, on the right-hand side, under the 6-year total, you can see that, the two big places of investment are rail cars, rail facilities, and the stations and passenger facilities, the station improvements that dominate the metro capital budget. I think one thing I want to point out to you is the debt service line, the next to last line on the bottom, which reflects the dedicated funding, which is at $500 million annually coming from the jurisdictions. But as you can see, by the end of the FY 2027 period under the plan, close to $360 million of the dedicated funding is going to go to debt service, which means that essentially the dedicated funding will not be available anymore for long-term debt, but it really becomes a pay-as-you-go, pay-go type of resource, which will be covering basically the debt service on dedicated funding debt that's been incurred over this 6-year period. As you can see, the debt has gone from zero in 2022. It, as pointed out, goes up to 360 million at the end of this period. Next slide. And finally, this is just a third way to give you an idea of who's paying for this. Maryland's share of this is 310 million. And you can see on the right-hand side the traditional way that that's broken down between the traditional capital payments, the PREA $50 million that was agreed some years ago, and the dedicated funding, which on the Maryland share is 167 of that $500 million. I think on the left-hand side, what you can see is that the traditional forms of payment, the formula grants from the federal government, the PREA money, and the jurisdictional payments still leave us about a billion short on this budget of 2.6 billion. And so that's the amount that's being raised from long-term funding using the dedicated funding debt. All right, so specifically what's going on in the county and some of these capital programs. First, the Rockville Canopy replacement. That's moving forward, and then this fall there will be a shutdown of both Rockville and Shady Grove stations, beginning on 9/11 until December 4th. During that 3-month period, the red line will essentially end at Twinbrook with bus bridges carrying passengers onto Rockville and Shady Grove. And so during this period, the work on the Canopy will continue, as well as the work on the Rockville Pike overpass construction that I understand is already underway and going forward. So that's part of the budget, and so that's going to move forward in this fiscal year. Next, please. We're going to take advantage of the shutdown at Rockville and Shady Grove to also do some improvement on the Shady Grove stairs. Vertical circulation would be improved from the platform to the mezzanine. And we're going to use this opportunity as well to install some new fare gates on the station platform. Next slide. So the fare gates are an interesting story in and of themselves because they will essentially provide for faster payment, their increased reliability. But the downside of any progress is that smart cards issued before 2012 are not compatible with the new system. So those old smart cards are going to have to be turned in and replaced. And there's essentially 2 ways to do that. One is the old way, snail mail, which is shown in the picture on the right-hand side, which you can just fill out a form, available online, send in your old card, and we'll send you back a new card. Or you can just go into one of the fare card machines and buy a new Smart Trip card and then transfer your old money from your old card to your new card, since your old card won't be usable in the system beginning in the middle of this year as we move forward and change out these fare gates throughout all of the station terminals. Next, please. And so at Medical Center, I think you're aware of the new entrance on the east side, but as part of that project, Metro on the west side will be improving vertical circulation inside the station. And so we expect all of those changes to be completed over the summer so that connection from the east side to the west side, which I guess the county is managing, as well as the new changes in circulation on the west side where the actual station is, should be completed over the coming summer. In addition, we just wanted to make you aware of some things going on the transit-oriented development project side. You have your own legislation, which will provide some incentives, sponsored by Councilman Reamer, which we expect that the developers at Grosvenor Strathmore, 5 Square, and the developer at White Flint, Elcor, will take advantage of as part of that. And of course, you're also aware of the MOU that the county executive has entered into with WMATA to try and coordinate development in the remaining White Flint parcels in connection with his concept for a kind of a college or a university tech center in that the old White Flint shopping center parcel. And finally, just at White Flint itself, we've been working with you on the north entrance alternative. That study was completed late in 2019. I guess it's awaiting financing, unless that financing did come through from the state in the budget. And then this slide just lays out three of the possibilities that could be considered a corporate campus or a university campus. Tech center, I guess, is the county executive concept, but in the past, we've looked at some other concepts of an urban neighborhood and entertainment innovative district that I guess are also on the table with inside the real estate folks at Metro. Just finally, some other matters, two other sites where things could go on are Forest Glen, where we do have a lot of parking lot there that's prime for development, and still looking for a developer for that parcel. And at Twin Brook, there's joint development sites on both sides of the track, on the east side as well as the west side on the Rockville Pike facing. And we're also working there to try and find some developers to develop those sites as well. So that sort of completes, bring up to date on what's going on in the budget, both the operating budget side for FY22 as well as on the capital side, and how it affects some projects going on in the county. So Charlie and I are here to answer any questions you may have, or just have a conversation where you think we're going in WMATA.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mr. Goldman. Very, very helpful. Thanks for all the hard work that went into this. A lot of it was also reflected in the letter that the county exec and I sent to you recently. I wanted to get your feedback on. And Mr. Scott, we're glad you're here as well. Didn't see you. I would have called you out earlier. Okay, Councilmember Reamer has the first question.
Thank you. Not to go down a different path, but I did want to ask about that letter I saw that you sent. Does it reflect existing council priorities? It was first I saw it this morning, so I appreciate hearing more about it. Wanted to ask about two issues. One, and Michael, thank you for your great work at WMATA. You've just been a stellar board member. You've been always accessible and always on the ball and looking out for the county's interests. So just want to say thank you. We really appreciate it. At the Fed committee, we talked about the issue of working on metro sites and development, and generally how we are positioning the county and marketing different metro sites. And there is a contract in the next year's budget for NCEDC to do more. The executive has asked NCEDC to do some of the legwork around the White Flint WMATA property. And what we agreed to add into their kind of core operational program was not only working on the White Flint metro property, but working on a broader marketing strategy for the Red Line corridors. And we had received a very interesting presentation from the WMATA real estate team about that. You know, they kind of had a vision about both red lines in the county form the backbone of a series of urban nodes, and really we need to be thinking about how to market the whole county and the whole all of the red line in different ways. So we asked that be added, and I believe it will be. Presume the county council will approve the MCEDC's budget. So I guess I wanted to bring that to your attention, Mike. This is going to be a situation where it would be focused on one specific parcel, but separately focused on all of the corridors and trying to identify multiple opportunities for Metro. And of course, it is leveraging the incentive and recognize that that incentive will be used in the White Flint should that ever proceed. So we could use your help, I think, Mike, ensuring that that focus is sustained. I think there's a bigger payoff for the county in the long run from having a successful strategy with the whole corridors, creating some identity, marketing that transit accessibility. I wanted to ask about electrification. I know that you mentioned it, but what is the strategy on bus electrification again? Can you give me kind of a headline? And are you working to accelerate that? Is it possible? I see as the capital budget is winding down, I think you sort of said, yeah, it's because a lot of those improvements have been finished. Do we need to rally the jurisdictions behind an electrification strategy? How can we accelerate that for the buses? Mike, thanks.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk about that, Hans, but let me just go back and talk on joint development for a minute. I think I provided to Chris and I believe Tom May and all of you, I may have a list of the joint development parcels that WMATA has in the region, and it lists all of those in Montgomery County along the red line. And so it identifies those that do have a developer, and there's very few other than that little Elcor parcel on White Flint and a legacy parcel still at Bethesda station downtown, which not much is going on. But all the other sites are sites that there is no designated developer at this time. So any help that the county can provide, a good opportunity for the county really to get involved and steer developers that you want, to WMATA for these parcels. I got to tell you though, I suspect this will be the last time I'll be giving you this presentation because my term on the board ends probably sometime in July, unless they decide to keep me on for a month or two until they find a replacement. But
are you eligible for reappointment, or you're done either way? Or
I think I'm not sure whether there's a term limit, but the legislation that was passed a couple of years ago that mandates that the secretary be one of the two principal WMATA directors requires that the other director move back and forth between Montgomery County and Prince George's County every 4 years. So I think that's been interpreted to mean that with my term ending, the governor needs to appoint a new principal director from Prince George's County. So
we
thank you off to the good graces of whoever that will be, and the secretary, Greg Slater, as the people that should be your principal contacts going forward for WMATA matters over the summer. Now, on electrification, I tried to highlight that by saying that there's nothing in the 6-year budget for the electrification of the WMATA fleet. What's going on is that there's a little pilot program involving about a dozen electric buses that will be used by WMATA over the next 2 or 3 years to try and determine what's the best way to operate and transition to a full electric bus fleet and what the costs may be. It turns out that some of the difficult issues here are not just the cost of buying the electric buses, which tend to be a little more expensive than the diesel or CNG buses, but a good deal of infrastructure that has to be added in at the bus garages and transformers to carry in the heavy up power lines that are needed to provide the level of power that's needed for a fully electric fleet, as well as a need for coordination with PEPCO and the other utilities in Virginia to make sure that they're providing the required level of power at the times that it's needed, which probably will be in the evening when the buses are in the garage to be recharged, although some charging during the day might be needed as well. I think the board members were very surprised to find out that these costs are uncertain at this point and are not included in the 6-year budget. So there are additional costs that would have to be added to the budget if it was possible to do so during the 6-year period. But I think there's pressure from both the district as well as there may be something that happened in the Maryland legislature that will require us board members to encourage WMATA staff to try and accelerate their electrification schedule. So it's something that happens this decade rather than somewhere between 2030 and 2040, which I think is the staff's current timeline.
Okay. Yeah, we need to do that. Thank you very much, Michael. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ansel.
Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Goldman, thank you so much for your service on the board. Before the pandemic, you had a very strong voice for riders, and I think that voice has only gotten stronger during the pandemic, and most recently with all the conversations about the doomsday budget. If what I saw in the news was accurate, your comment earlier this month about trying to figure out new ways to encourage people to return to ridership. And I think you had called it bold, persistent experimentation. And that's a concept I absolutely agree with, whether it's, reducing fees, lowering fares, playing around and experimenting with the peak pricing. And those are all thoughts that I support here in the county and have written a memo to this committee for, taking a look at how we collect fees for ride-on, right? We want to encourage people to come back, and we know that those who have been dependent on public transportation are those who've had no other option and are usually transit dependent. And so again, I just want to thank you for your clarity and fortitude fighting for public transportation here in Montgomery County and the entire DMV. I'm remiss that I'll have to get rid of my old decade or two old transit card. It's given me a lot of good use over the years, so I look forward to Charlie's guidance as to how I transfer over the money that I have on it. But goodbye, old friend. So
if you flash it up again, Charlie can tell you from the back of it whether it definitely is a card that needs to be replaced.
Oh, it certainly does. There is no doubt that it needs to be replaced. I know that. But yeah, I'll look for that guidance to figure out how to transfer that money. And just a few questions for you all. But let me just first start. Council President Chair Hucker had mentioned a memo. I would love if you could email that. I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet, so I'm curious what the memo from you and the county executive stated with regard to WMATA. So please do share that with me. I'm not sure if Councilmember Reamer got it. Well, he said he read it. So. He looks like he was about to unmute himself.
I saw it on Facebook. So
okay, I would appreciate being emailed so I can take a look at that. And then, in the presentation, you had talked about the red line stations and what's happening over the next few months, and had referenced Rockville and Shady Grove. One of the questions I have is about the Rockville pedestrian bridge. Do you have an update on that work, when it might reopen, or is that part of the contingency based on the Rockville station itself?
My understanding is that construction has already started. I'll just ask Charlie if he can confirm that, because that was my understanding from staff that that's already underway.
Yes, if you look at Rockville right now, the staging area has been set up for work on the pedestrian bridge. So that work should be complete by August, and then right after that, we're going to transition into the shutdown for the larger Canopy project. So we need to clear out some of the staging materials from the pedestrian bridge to make space for the Canopy project. So they're all somewhat interrelated, but hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have full access back to a brand new station there with a station canopy and a pedestrian bridge in good order for our riders.
Fantastic. Interrelated as much of this work is, right? So I appreciate that. And then the other question I have is about, we're going to have many conversations after we let you go about electrification of our fleet here. And not only electrifying our buses, but having the infrastructure to be able to charge them. And so I'm curious if there are conversations with WMATA and the county about co-locating some of the facilities so that we can collectively charge our various buses, throughout the county.
Well, what I can tell you is that the board members, when they were briefed by the general manager on their plan, gave him directions, that he should coordinate these electrification developments with the county, because we pointed out not only does DC with the DC circulator is moving to electrification, but Ride-On is moving to electrification as well as one or two of the regional bus operations in Virginia. And so his sort of guidance, direction from the board was to get out there and be coordinating these kind of issues in kind of power flow and co-location to the extent that that's possible with the regional bus operators. Now, I see that Chris is online, and I don't know whether any of that has come down to the level of actual staff direct contacts with Montgomery County DOT and the district DOT at this point, but that certainly is the direction that the board wanted the general manager to pursue.
Well, I'm glad the general manager has made those comments. I think it's smart. And Director Conklin, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, this is an activity that's actually been underway for a year or more. As WMATA has been modernizing its bus garages and looking at where its service patterns are, we've been in conversation with them about co-locating our Nicholson Court facility with the existing Montgomery Division garage. And ultimately, we're working towards a zero emission fleet plan in concert with the Climate Action Plan. So electrification of that facility would need to be part of that. There'll be a lot more to come on this later about whether battery electric or fuel cell or what are the right technology choices. But co-location makes a great deal of sense. And as we pursue the restructuring or reimagining Ride-On work in direct collaboration with WMATA on their network redesign on their services in Montgomery County, we're going to be looking for these synergies where we can take advantage of investments that are each other are making in vehicles and support facilities and where the services run so that they're perhaps more efficiently operated than they are today, which is just based on legacy decisions about where operations facilities have been located. So yes, Mr. Goldman.
Much more to come in the conversation later today, but I'm glad to hear that this coordination has begun, and the co-location absolutely makes the most sense. And so we'll continue this conversation later in this agenda. But I'll just conclude by Michael again thanking you for your leadership, and as you continue being an engaged resident here in the county and an avid transit user yourself, please continue with your thoughts and ideas on bold, persistent experimentation, and do share them with all of us so that we can help implement and drive it forward. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and your confidence in me. And I would just say that my concern in the bold and persistent experimentation on the rail fare side is that I don't think it's sustainable to have a metro rail system that is operating at 15% of pre-COVID levels or even the 34% of pre-COVID levels that the staff forecasts anticipates at the end of June of next year. If we can't get back to 75 or 80% of pre-COVID levels rather quickly, I think the region is going to face a real fiscal crisis because it's going to have to decide whether it wants to continue having Metro Rail run at such reduced capacity levels. It's a fairly large investment by the region in Metro Rail, or whether it wants to have a smaller system with longer headways or shorter trains, or something like that, or whether it wants to pay to subsidize that, because the federal money, there's a big chunk of federal money, but it'll carry us through FY22 and it'll probably carry us through FY23. But after that, the piggy bank is going to be empty, and the region's going to have to make a decision whether they want to belly up to the bar to finance Metro Rail system at its existing pre-COVID levels, or whether it wants to see some reduction in the scope of rail service in the region.
I agree.
So I leave you with that Christmas present of sorts.
As long as there's a gift receipt with that Christmas present, so we can course correct need be in the future. But thank you, sir, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. If you could take care of that before you leave, Mike, that would be really helpful.
Which part? The Christmas?
The writer, going away? Yeah. Just make sure that's on your bucket list before you. That's it. Just a couple additional questions. One, I don't know if we have it, but if we don't, can you send us the soft copy of the slides?
Charlie, did we?
Charlie can.
Charlie, was that sent?
Yes, of course. Yeah, Glenn has it. Yeah.
Okay.
I figured. Okay. Sometimes these are last minute additions and we don't have them. So I want to curl up when we have more time with them and get to know better. And then number two, so Silver Line Phase 2 opens when? Is it open now?
Silver Line Phase 2, of course, is being built by the Airport Authority. And
right.
My recommendation is that you shouldn't have airports build subways in the future. But as it is, they are on a schedule where they now say they will complete the project and turn it over to WMATA sometime right after Labor Day of this year. That then begins a kind of 5 month period where sort of try it out, make sure everything works in the system and that it's safe for revenue operations. And so when you apply that schedule from Labor Day, you get a revenue start date in January or February of 2022. But that all assumes that the airport is going to come through and finish the project by Labor Day and correct all the construction problems and technological issues that were still there when we were last briefed, last month. So it's a moving target, but at least the current target is transferred to WMATA after Labor Day and revenue service in January or February of 2022. I should point out, which you should also keep in mind, that the cost of operating Silver Line Phase 2 is estimated at $10 million a month, so that when it gets to actual operating for a full year, that's going to add a $120 million to the operating cost budget for WMATA. Wow. And despite what my colleagues in Fairfax and Loudoun say, the passenger forecasts there are I think more long term than anything one can expect to materialize in the short term. So not too many riders when it starts, maybe 10, 20 years down the line, we're going to have ridership, but this is going to be a very expensive operation initially for the region.
Wow, 10 million. Okay, so but the bottom line for the board, 4 or 5 people watching this at home, is that Montgomery County residents might anticipate being able to ride rail to Dulles by January 22.
Under the current timeline announced by the airport authority.
Okay, great, thanks. And then, do you mind going to slide 11 again? The sources of revenue.
This is the pies chart.
If you can, it's okay. Can you remind me, like, what's that based on, the jurisdictional split? I know I should know this. And then one thing that I forgot to ask, I think in previous briefings, in Fairfax County pays, but also City of Falls Church pays, City of Fairfax pays. We end up paying more than this Fairfax County, Montgomery County does by a little. And then their municipalities are paying, but ours aren't. And so could you elaborate a little on how is that determined, why Rockville and Gaithersburg don't pay if they have stations?
You're talking about this chart, the pie chart, or this one?
I think it might be after that, because it wasn't the pie chart as much as just a chart of revenue sources.
Okay. I think I can.
There you go. Yeah, on the right side.
Okay. So this is
Fairfax
the
County 40 million, Montgomery County 46 million, Prince George's 47. Fairfax is larger than both of them, and then and their cities are paying, but ours aren't.
Right. Well, you're asking a question I don't have a very good answer to, because you essentially, on the Maryland side, Montgomery County and Prince George's County don't actually pay. This is sort of the allocation for those counties as part of the transit zone, and of course that's paid by the state. But why on the Maryland side it's just the counties, and on the Virginia side there's a further breakdown that includes the independent jurisdictions like the City of Falls Church and the City of Alexandria. I just and the City of Fairfax, I don't have an answer to that.
Mr. Chairman,
before
the
my
answer
time
is that the jurisdictions that signed or signatories to the WMATA Compact from the very beginning, there were D.C., Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and 5 independent jurisdictions in Virginia: Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax County, Fairfax City, and Falls Church City. Falls Church City and Fairfax City are not part of Fairfax County. Fairfax City is an enclave within Fairfax County, but it is not part of Fairfax County. And so they are all required to pay. Rockville and Gaithersburg, because although they are independent cities, there's a lot of county services that are applied to that. So that's how it's treated differently. And Mr. Goldman's right, of course, that in Maryland, going back for 20 years or more than that, actually, the state has been paying all the bills for Montgomery and Prince George's counties.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thanks. I forgot. Yeah, Virginia law is different than Maryland law regarding municipalities, right? Okay, and then Smart Trip machines. I get that you can mail in the old pre-2011 ones or go to that website, but also I think you said quickly at the end, Mike, what I bet many more people will do than anything else, which is the current Smart Trip machines will take the old pre-2012 cards for purposes of conversion to a new card, correct?
The machines in the stations where you can buy a fare card will allow you to buy the fare card, and then you can go online and transfer from your Smart Trip account from the old one to the new card. Charlie's shaking his head yes, so let me let him answer this. So I, as a board member, don't blow it.
The machine won't accept the old card. You actually have to transfer them. There's a 2-step process. You buy a new card, and then you transfer the fund, the balance, online.
Correct.
Okay, got it. That's it for me, I think. I always thank Charlie, but Mike, this is thank you so much for all your service. I know I'll see you before June, but let me publicly say how grateful all of our residents are for all the time you spend on this, and we're all better off for it. So we'll do something not more formal before June, but we really are grateful for all your service.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you, Mr. Hucker, at the next meeting of the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, where we still are colleagues, at least for the next couple months.
Absolutely.
So enjoy the rest of your meeting and have a great weekend all.
Mr. Hucker, on behalf of the executive branch and the Department of Transportation, I'd also like to truly thank Mr. Goldman. He has been a fabulous partner in working through not just WMATA issues, but regional transit issues. And his service to this county was invaluable at this time last year when we were in the first rounds of trying to figure out how these federal aid packages would work. So I will truly miss his partnership and look forward to working with the other Maryland representative when they're appointed. But Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Well
I enjoyed working with you this past, is it a year or is it longer than a year by now?
Longer
as well as with, my God, as long as with Gary as well and predecessors. And it's been a great experience and a great run. But we must all go out the pasture at some point. And so I think my time is coming and I shall move on to better things, I hope. Thank you.
Returning to the rail yard.
It's just like an old subway car that's put out there for exhibit.
You're heading to a new destination, that's all.
Right.
Right.
We started with a metaphor and we'll end with a metaphor on the transit side. Thank you. Good luck in the rest of your meeting.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you on your busman's holiday.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
All right, Dr. Orland, back to you. I think we can resume item 1, right, and then move quickly on item 2.
Can I just say, I didn't realize the long-term situation in Metro might be so impacted. So, these ridership estimates seem like they're it's the whole ball game, and we'll need to be tracking this closely. So, wow, thanks.
I can just say I haven't seen any real analysis of this from COG either. I don't know, Glenn or Chris, if you have talked at staff level, but they haven't. I don't think the board's had a presentation about this, and this really affects everybody. Those rail ridership numbers, especially, are really grim.
Yeah, I think the preliminary budgets that WMATA has posted but not enacted that reflect the decrease in system-generated revenue are the only discussion of this that we've seen. We haven't really seen a longer-term perspective on what this means for the system. But you're absolutely right. It's time to start to get our arms around that issue.
Yeah, especially since. Sorry.
No, our time's limited today, and I should have asked that earlier. But do we know much about what the assumptions are based on? The analyses I've seen of like what the post-COVID world will look like, in terms of commuting and commercial activity, commuters returning to regular, traditional work sites, they seem to be all over the map.
Yeah, what I've seen is that there are two elements here. One is COVID itself. I think it's a matter of like how long it'll take before the pandemic is really behind us and people get used to doing what they would like to do. But the other one, which is probably more permanent, is telecommuting, and particularly with office workers, the heavy preponderance of office workers downtown. Employers and employees have both learned telecommuting is a really good thing. And even though people will be back in the office more than they are now, they probably won't be 5 days a week. And that will really cut into Metro Rail ridership particularly.
Okay, well, I guess to be continued. But if you all are able to engage at this level or look at some analysis, that would certainly be helpful to us. I know you saw the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority study. It predicted like 20% decline for 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, if we're ready to move to item number one, we can do this quite quickly. Item one is the transportation fees and fines and fares resolution by law passed in 2004. The council has to approve any changes to any transportation fees, fines, or fares that are charged by the Department of Transportation. Because the proposals this year for parking fees and hours as well as transit fares are so integrated with the budgets, Mr. Camacho and I decided rather than trying to cover them as part of item number one, we'd cover them as part of items 2 and 4 respectively, the parking fees and hours in item 2 and the transit fees in item 4. So I'd suggest we skip over number 1, and then whatever the committee recommends for transit fees and for transit fares and parking fees and hours, they'll be reflected in a future package of the council on the transportation fees, fines, and fares resolutions, and we'll go from there. So with that, I suggest we go right to item number 2, and Mr. Camacho, who's the lead on parking now, will take us through the packet.
Yes, good morning, T&E committee. First off, I would like to say thank you to DOT and Dr. Orlin and OMB that helped me write this packet and get all the information for you all today. Quickly, I will just give a brief overview of the entire PLD budget, parking lot district budget. So from FY21, the county executive's FY22 recommended budget is about 12.3% less. So it goes from 28,030,119 to 24,579,335. There are no changes to the FTEs and personnel. So with that kind of overview of the whole parking lot district, I'd like to go district by district. So starting with Bethesda. So if you want to go to page 4 in the packet, we have expenditure changes by district, and you'll see Bethesda there. So in Bethesda, the county executive recommends a decrease of 1.7 million approximately, or 11.7% of the FY21 approved budget. These reductions primarily consist of a reduction in debt service, which is really a reflection of full repayment of 2012 Series 2012B revenue bonds. So with the full repayment of that, debt service goes down. There's also a table on page 4 and 5 that shows the rest of the changes. So there are some operational savings that were identified, particularly with regards to utilities. And everything else is really mostly personnel and benefit adjustments in Bethesda. So keeping with Bethesda, we're going to skip the Silver Spring expenditure changes, or I can stop there as well if you have any, if the committee has any questions on the specific changes to the FY22 budget.
Councilmember Reamer has a question.
Okay.
Well, I think we ought to jump to discussion, relatively quickly. So we could blow through.
You want to go on through all the PLDs and then discuss? Great. Back to you, Carlos.
Okay, so let me jump to the revenue portion of Bethesda. So the estimated year-end fund balance in Bethesda is 39.3% in FY21, and this is despite a 55% reduction in parking fee revenue and 44% reduction in parking fine revenue in FY21, not 22. And so the reason why this fund balance isn't as low as you would expect is due to a $6 million infusion from the general fund. And what I've written in my packet is a little bit misconstrued. I didn't fully understand the justification around the $6 million from the general fund to the Bethesda PLD. I did in a sense. I know that it was to address debt service obligation and requirements within the bond covenants within Bethesda. However, the way that DOT came up with that is different from how I described it. So I'd like to hand it over to them to describe it a little bit further.
Well, it's actually a fairly complicated exercise to figure this out. As we were working through last year, obviously there's significant revenue reductions in the PLDs, and we were looking at the debt coverage ratios and other factors in Bethesda that don't apply in Wheaton and Silver Spring, and realized that the revenues from direct operations were not sufficient to meet those requirements. So we engaged with our colleagues in the Office of Management and Budget, and I see Mary is here, and the Department of Finance, to try to figure out how do we make sure that Bethesda satisfies its debt obligations in such a way that it doesn't have a broader impact on the county's overall debt perspectives and how we're viewed by rating agencies, and identified that a general fund supplement for the Bethesda PLD was needed, and then there were some other changes associated with urban district funding so that the impact to the general fund was not as great, because the debt coverage ratio, the transfer to the urban district isn't an expense, it's a transfer, so it doesn't necessarily PLD. So these funds could then be used to supplement some of the urban district funding. Things like the police parking are part of the justification, but it also reflects the impacts of the county's broader policies during COVID about restaurant pickup zones, the occupation of paid parking for dining, and general reductions in business activities mandated by public health measures. So that's really the full picture of that, and that is why going into the next fiscal year, the fund balance is higher than we would otherwise expect, is because we had to have the revenues to satisfy the debt coverage ratios. Mary, I don't know if I got everything right, so if I got something wrong, go ahead and correct.
No, that is correct, but I should also just mention for the committee that some of the use of federal funds is to basically backfill that general fund transfer. But this was a necessary step to preserve our bond status.
Thank you. So continuing on, so in FY22, you can see on the table on page 7, the fund balance does go down quite a bit to 5.3%. Revenues are made up somewhat. DOT is assuming a substantial bounce back after COVID, but revenues aren't. They're being a bit cautious, and reasonably so, I think. They're projecting around a 20% reduction in the parking fee base that is generally assumed from FY21 through 26. Also, the bond restricted reserve increases in FY22. DOT is using funds from the Renovations and Restoration Bond Reserve account for renovations in the Waverly Garage, which are significant and needed. So with that 5.3% fund balance also includes what we're going to discuss later in the rate increase as well. So the county executive has incorporated additional revenue in FY22 stemming from these rate increases, and the additional revenue is projected to be $900,000 in FY22. So that is kind of the picture in Bethesda. I don't know if I should continue to Silver Spring and Wheaton, or if I should continue with Bethesda to discuss the CIP and the specific changes to the rates and fares. How would the committee like to proceed?
Why don't you stick with Bethesda just to cover the proposed increase in the rates, because I mean that's certainly germane, and then we can quickly, I think, get to the other ones and then have the discussion about the whole picture.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so let me, if you want to follow along in the packet, I will go to page 11 and 12, which discusses changes to the CIP. So the Parking Bethesda Facility Renovations project. So overall, the 6-year costs for the Bethesda renovations project are increased by $2 million. primarily due to increases in general repairs and labor of effort costs in FY25 and 26. However, you can see that in FY21 and 22, CIP expenditures are reduced, primarily to just give some fiscal relief in those years as the PLD tries to recover from the revenue loss due to COVID. So those expenditures in FY21 and 22 that are deferred are really recouped in FY23 and 24. But then there's also a $2 million increase over 25 and 26, which council staff is not recommending, and really recommends that these increases above what was approved in the FY21 through 26 CIP be considered in the context of the FY23 through 28 CIP, as we get a better picture of what the fiscal situation is in FY22. So that's the CIP piece in Bethesda. Now, going ahead to the...
On the CIP component, I just wanted to make clear that the projects that are reflected there are projects that were there before and deferred. So we are anticipating more systemic maintenance and higher cost for those same projects. So it's not an expansion of our CIP. It's that what's needed and we know is needed is going to become more expensive as we defer it. So the committee and council always has the opportunity to consider these, and we review these pretty much every year with operating budget. But we kind of know these expenses are baked into the needs of Bethesda. So we would differ from the analyst recommendation on this and suggest that you reflect what we know is needed, but you will always see these again in the subsequent reviews.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Now, going to the recommended changes to fares and fees and enforcement hours. So in the Bethesda PLD, the county executive and DOT are recommending changes that would increase the maximum hourly rates in surface parking lots from $1.50 to $2 per hour, and in parking garages from $1.25 to $1.75. The daily maximum fee for gated garages will also increase from $15 to $22.50, and a lost ticket for a gated garage would assume the same fee. The daily parking permit is also increased from $15 to $22.50, and the price of the monthly access card for garages and for the parking convenience stickers are also increased from $150 to $195. I will note that the last time that rates were increased for on-street parking lots and garages in Bethesda was FY18, and these were increases of 25 cents per hour. I will also note that while the increases are proposed as hourly maximums, so garages and lots can and do charge less than the maximum. This just allows DOT to kind of go to that maximum to really manage demand in lots and garages. So as I mentioned before, the result of these fee increases would be $900,000 in additional revenue in FY22, an additional $1.9 million in FY23, and $2.25 million in 24 and 26. The differences amongst the years are really having to do with these increases having to be rolled out a bit gradually, and also as we get further away from the pandemic, we expect revenues to generally be higher than they have been in 21, 22, and so forth. I just wanted also to point out, if the committee were to reject the county executive's proposed rate increases in Bethesda, the fund balance for Bethesda in FY22 would be negative $198,383, or negative 1.5% of FY23 projected operating expenditures. So with that, I will hand it over to the committee, or yeah.
Do you want to go through Wheaton?
Oh, okay. I can go through the rest of them as well.
Well, I think a lot of the discussion, well, I could be wrong, but I thought the discussion will end up being more holistic. A lot of these concerns we've been dealing with for quite a while, but it might benefit everybody to have, Wheaton certainly won't take long.
Okay. Yeah, Wheaton won't take too long. So, I mean, it's really a similar situation in Wheaton as well. So revenues in Wheaton are reduced by, I believe, I'm sorry, just trying to find Wheaton. I'm sorry. Well, I'll just start with the recommended changes to the Wheaton budget. So the county executive is recommending a decrease of 90,545 in Wheaton, which is 5.7% less than the FY21 approved budget. Some of the changes that the county executive is recommending, the only change with service impacts are a $7,500 increase in Garage 13 revenue collection with the opening of Garage 13, the Marketplace Garage in Wheaton. Other expenditure changes are motor pool adjustment, additional enforcement due to the expansion of enforcement hours in Wheaton as well. And you also have some compensation and benefit adjustments. Operational costs are also decreased in Wheaton by 129,268. And then in terms of revenue, let's see if I can find the revenue reduction in Wheaton. So parking fee revenue in FY21 decreased by 44% in Wheaton, and parking fine revenue decreased by 70% as well. I will note that while Wheaton in FY21 ends the year with the lowest fund balance out of the 3 PLDs, the outlook for Wheaton is a bit stronger. As Director Conklin mentioned, Silver Spring and Wheaton do not have debt service obligations. And if you look at the table on page 10, you can see from FY23 through FY26, the fund balance in Wheaton is actually increasing from 20% in FY23 to 65% in FY26. And really what's happening is the increased revenue through increased rates and expansion of enforcement really helps Wheaton. Also, expenditures peak in FY23 and decrease in FY24 and 25. So that really helps. But I also will note that Wheaton contributes the least to its urban district. But if the Wheaton fund balance continues to grow, there is a possibility that the Wheaton PLD could transfer more revenue to the urban district to offset costs from the general fund. So that is the operating budget picture in Wheaton. In terms of CIP, facility renovations project in Wheaton, you can look at the table on page 13 of the packet. Overall, the county executive is recommending decreasing expenditures by $612,000 over the 6-year period from FY21 through 26. This is really a reduction in general repairs and labor of effort projects. So that is those are the recommended changes in Wheaton. And then if we skip over to the rate increases and the expansion of enforcement hours. So in Bethesda and Silver Spring, you have a rate structure where, I'm sorry?
Which pages did you skip to?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Page 16 in the packet. So the rate structure is changing now in Wheaton to match what is currently in place in Bethesda and in Silver Spring. So currently Wheaton has short-term and long-term parking fees. Now that'll change to on-street parking rate, surface lot parking rate, and a garage parking rate. So the maximum hourly rate for on-street parking would be $1.25, and for garages and surface lots, it'd be $1. Currently, short-term parking has a maximum of 75 cents per hour, and long-term parking has a maximum of 60 cents per hour. Also, the parking convenience sticker is increased from $113 to $132 per month. And then in terms of the expansion of parking enforcement hours, hours of enforcement would expand from 9 to 6 to 9 to 10 Monday through Saturday. And in surface parking lots and garages, it would expand from 9 to 6 to 7 to 10, Monday through Saturdays as well. And I will note that Wheaton is the only PLD that enforces parking rates in lots and garages on Saturdays. The last time rates were increased in Wheaton was FY13. And if the committee were to reject the county executive's proposed recommendation for the Wheaton rate increases and expansion of enforcement hours, Wheaton would end FY22 with a negative $340,325 fund balance. So that's the picture in Wheaton as well. Would you like me to continue to Silver Spring?
Sure. How did those on-street rates in Wheaton compare to Bethesda and Silver Spring? I don't see that in the packet, but maybe I missed it.
On-street rates in Wheaton, okay. Maximum hourly parking is $125 and $1 Bethesda rates are increasing. Oh, you're talking about on-street rates, correct?
Right.
Not
garage.
So on-street rates are not changing in Bethesda. I believe it's $225. In Silver Spring, or no, it's $325, I believe, in Bethesda.
Max of $225 an hour, $125 in Wheaton, and Silver Spring is.
So it's $325 in Bethesda and $225 in Silver Spring, maximum.
$325, $25, $125. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, might be helpful at some point to have a 9-cell chart that's the 3 zones and 3 methods or places to park. But anyway, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to Silver
Spring. Okay, great. All right. In Silver Spring. Okay, in Silver Spring, the county executive is recommending a decrease of $1.6 million, or roughly equivalent to 14.1% of the FY21 approved budget. Operating costs are decreased by 18.9%. Personnel costs are increased by 3.1%. The only change identified with a service impact will be an enforcement funding realignment of $75,000 due to an expansion of enforcement hours in Silver Spring. Other adjustments, again, compensation and benefit adjustments, and then operational savings were also found in Wheaton, totaling $715,000. And also there is a significant fixed cost reduction of $1,090,000. That fixed cost reduction is somewhat due to the completion of a service facility in Garage 2, which is located on Spring Street and Cameron Street. That will allow maintenance teams to occupy county-owned space instead of leased space. So that is the operating budget changes to Silver Spring. There are, in terms of revenue, Silver Spring was hit the hardest out of the PLDs in terms of a reduction in revenue. So parking fee revenue in FY21 is expected to be 63% less, and parking fine revenue is expected to be 67% less. FY21 year-end fund balance is expected to be 29%, which is, despite this reduction in revenue, Silver Spring had a really healthy beginning fund balance, as you can see on page 9 at the top of that table, $11.5 million at the beginning of the year. Going to FY22, the beginning fund balance is $2.8 million, and the end year fund balance is 4.4% of next year's operating expenses. So quite a significant drop in FY22. Longer term, from FY23 to 26, Silver Spring is expected to rebound. So in FY23, year-end fund balance projected to be 22%, in FY24, 30%, but then you have a decrease in 25 and 26, primarily due to some deferred capital expenditures that are now being kind of added on the back end to Silver Spring. And we will see that those CIP amendments to Silver Spring on page 12. So County Executive is also recommending changes to the Silver Spring facility renovations project. The project is decreased by around 4.5 million over the 6-year span compared to the approved FY21 through 26 CIP. So you can see some pretty significant reductions in FY21 through 23. So in total, around 8.5 million in scheduled capital improvements are eliminated or deferred. Then you see costs recouped in FY24 through 26. So the PLD is expected to incur $11,820,000 in capital expenditures over that time frame, 4 million above what was previously approved. These costs include general repairs and labor of effort costs, as well as elevator upgrades for high priority facilities. And then the county executive is also recommending changes to the facility planning parking studies in Silver Spring. So these studies are performed every 3 to 5 years to analyze existing and future parking supply and demand conditions. And the last parking study in Silver Spring was completed in 2019. So the overall total of the project, that doesn't change. The expected expenditures over the life of the project, it remains unchanged at $1.26 million, but the expenditure schedule from FY21 through 26 does change. It is increased by $184,000. DOT let me know that the project did not spend all appropriated funds in FY20, and there will be no expenditures incurred in FY21 due to COVID-19. So funds will roll over, and also you see the increase in FY22 through 26. And as part of council staff's recommendation, which is concurring with the facility planning parking study, and I think we'll probably speak about some of these longer term policy options later on, but it would be really beneficial for some of these facility planning parking studies to look into. I know Councilmember Friedson in his memo spoke about the viability of the PLD model, also looking at dynamic parking rates relating to real-time supply and demand, and also the possibility of setting market rates for PLD facilities. So that is the CIP situation in Silver Spring. Onto the rates, that is on page 15. So the county executive is recommending expanding hours of parking enforcement from 9 to 6 to 9 to 10, Monday through Friday. And then that's for on-street parking. And then for parking lots and garages, enforcement would expand from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. now to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. And I believe that is consistent with enforcement in Bethesda. So the daily maximum fee for all gated garages would also increase from $15 to $18.75. A lost ticket would be the same fee, and daily parking permits would also increase from $12 to $15. Enforcement hours have remained unchanged in Silver Spring since FY08, but Silver Spring did realize some rate increases in FY21. That's why you don't really see any increases to on-street parking, lots, or garages. So DOT expects that the proposed fee increases in additional enforcement will yield $1,050,000 in additional revenue in FY22, an additional approximately $2 million in FY23, and $2.7 million annually from FY24 through 26. And then if the committee were to reject these proposed recommendations on the fees and enforcement hours, Silver Spring would see an FY22 year-end fund balance of negative $597,333. So with that, I hand it over to the committee.
Gee, thanks.
Can I just say in summary? I think we're recommending. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carlos. I think we're recommending exactly what the county executive recommended for the operating budgets for all three districts, and recommending the fare and hours increases in all three districts that the executive is recommending, and the CIP proposals for Bethesda, for Wheaton and Silver Spring, the executive's recommending, and the only difference is it was referred to earlier. The Bethesda PLD renovations project, where we're recommending not increasing the amounts in fiscal year 25 and 26, but DOT and the executive recommending the higher levels in those years, and Chris already commented on that. Did that summarize it, Carlos?
Yeah, I believe so. And also, I'm sorry, I did send out an addendum to the packet yesterday, and it deals with a transfer that occurred in FY16 from from Silver Spring to Bethesda, and the repayment of that loan. So that should be the last page in the packet. And let me here. So basically, in the FY21 operating budget resolution, it was stated that Bethesda would repay the previous $3 million transfer from Silver Spring that was first made in FY16. They would repay that loan in FY22. As we just discussed, the fiscal situation in Bethesda is not such that they could repay that $3 million loan in FY22. So council staff is recommending approving the repayment that the county executive and DOT have come up with. In the 6-year fiscal plan, they have Bethesda repaying Silver Spring in $1.5 million increments in FY23 and 24. However, council staff has also recommended that in the resolution, additional flexibility is included that would stipulate repayment no later than FY27. This would just allow Bethesda a bit more flexibility in terms of actual availability of resources in case revenue projections are not realized in FY23 and 24. So that's it.
And Mr. Conklin, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, thank you. I think council staff did an excellent job summarizing this. I just wanted to reiterate that it's the executive's recommendations to keep these funds as self-sustaining enterprise funds, and that's why you see the proposals you see in front of you. The fund balance policy, you see those carryovers from year to year. Those are really essential. We would have been in a far worse position through FY21 if we hadn't had fund balances from prior years to cushion the blow of the lost revenue. By and large, I'd say this model has been very effective for the county. It has subsidized other services in these urban districts in all three, reducing the burden on the general tax payer for those additional services. We're seeing very substantial interest in redevelopment in some of the underutilized facilities in each of these PLDs as part of the economic development mission of the PLDs. And the real challenges that we're having with the PLDs are both the massive impact to demand and utilization through the past year, and also some challenges with the overall revenue generation, which is driven by not having a predictable increase plan that's tied essentially to the rate of inflation of the services the PLD is providing. So we end up in these crescendos of arguments about rate increases or not rate increases, but really the cost increases are generally predictable. And if we could get into a pattern of having predictable rate increases, I think that would be beneficial to the PLDs. The other thing that I would mention is the rate increases that you've heard about are not necessarily new. They have been in the financial models for quite some time. The Bethesda one is accelerated from what was planned in FY24, just recognizing the more significant financial challenge in Bethesda. The others have been in the financial models for a couple years, and in fact are delayed from when they were initially recommended. So, while it seems like they're new rate increase proposals, they're not actually new rate increase proposals. They're just before you now. So I just wanted to give that perspective. And the only other thing I would highlight is the overall fiscal health of Bethesda also has expectation of sales from or proceeds from a land sale in the next fiscal year. And that land sale has been pushed out a couple times already. So there is some additional fiscal risk in Bethesda related to that land sale actually closing. It's a small parking lot on Woodmont Avenue, but it has a relatively high land value that's in the financial model you've seen. So we may have a problem with that if that land sale for one reason or another doesn't close in the next fiscal year. So with that, I just wanted to give that additional perspective before the committee's discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So the Bethesda land sales pushed back again? And how likely is it to actually happen?
Joe's, I don't know if you're on, I know your video wasn't working, but if you could share the details of that, that'd be helpful.
Sure, yes. I'm sorry, my video is not working, so I'm trying to connect by phone too, but maybe that'll work. But in my office, the video is not working. So yes, the land sale for lot 43, which is on Woodmont Avenue, has been on the books for some time. It has been pushed back due to COVID. They've requested a extension until FY23 at this point. And, it all depends on how things proceed with COVID and the development environment, moving forward. So right now, like we have it in our financial models, it is projected to be in FY23 to the best of our knowledge with the information that we have right now, but that could be postponed or delayed or canceled depending on how the situation moves forward.
Okay, thank you. So, Carlos, first decision we have to make is on the operating budget recommendation?
Yes, on the operating budget recommendations I split it up between Bethesda, Wheaton, and Silver Spring. Yeah. So if the committee would like to make a decision on that at this time.
Colleagues, any comments on that?
My comments are a little more holistic here, I think.
Okay. For holistic comments before we get to the granular decisions?
I think it would be helpful.
Sure.
My general view of these parking rate increases over the years has been that we should charge the appropriate rate so that parking continues to be available, and if we charge too little, then people sit in the spots beyond what they might otherwise, and a new customer can't get a spot on the street or in the garage. So, that has always been my guiding approach, is let's find the right rate so that there are parking spots available for customers coming to these areas. As far as, what we do now in the wake of this huge loss of revenue that all these districts have incurred, because we stopped charging. We're not going to jack up fees for athletic fields, in order to make up for lost revenue, I would hope. We understand that a revenue loss due to the pandemic is kind of a county-wide issue. And so what I don't quite understand across all of these is what's the balance here between revenue transfer from the general fund to account for what was lost, and then how much of the rate increase that's proposed is really needed, in the short term. I don't agree with the projection of a sustained decrease of parking, usage. I think we're going to, my understanding is we're projecting about a 20% continuing underutilization, or more or less, in these funds. And I don't necessarily think that's what we're going to experience next year. I mean, I would assume starting in the summer, we're going to see pretty high usage of our parking, in our urban areas, in our parking lots. So I wouldn't accept that forecast, and I think that's important for the fiscal balance that we're trying to achieve. I would like to see any proposed rate increase as kind of the bare minimum that's needed to achieve balance after we've accounted for how much we think the general revenue transfer is that might be needed. And I think it's an appropriate use of the federal relief funds, just as it is with bus fare revenue that we've lost, for all the time that we're not charging bus fare, we're using federal or other relief funds. And I think it's a reasonable use here to say our parking lot districts have been hammered, because we stopped charging and people stopped using them. But it's because we stopped charging, it's sort of irrespective of use. And I guess we don't really know what the use was, but we stopped charging. So, it seems like an appropriate relief fund application. So I'm, Carlos, you drew the short straw getting this assignment, and I think the council staff is hazing you. But we need some recommendations here. I would like to ask, council staff for some recommendations that would be more along the lines of what I'm talking about. We'll hear what colleagues say, but what can we do here that is not, that recognizes that the loss of revenue is temporary. It's because of the pandemic. It kind of has no bearing on our overall policy for what rates we set. And we should try to just keep edging our way forward and get out of this until we get into a more stable situation. And then we can talk about, once again, what's the right rate, and how do we set those things? So I guess I would like to hear what council staff can comment in response to those points.
Glenn, do you want to start or should I?
Yeah, it's hard. You're right. We really don't know what the usage is going to be. We don't think FY22 is going to be up to 100% anytime soon. But perhaps by FY23 and later, it could be back to almost normal. Again, I refer to something I said a little bit earlier. To the extent that people are driving.
I mean, people are going to go out to restaurants. They're going to go so on.
I think it's not so much restaurants. It's also people commuting to work. And as I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be sort of a long-term impact from telecommuting. That a lot of people who drive to work and park to work during the day in Bethesda, and they're paying for 9 hours a day, they're not just paying for a couple hours for dinner, aren't going to show up. And so we're in this situation that we quite don't know what is going to happen until it happens. So I'd be worried about not doing something with the fares right now, frankly, with the rates. Sorry. And this is not something you should do now, but I think on to plant the seed, a couple things. First of all, that $6 million advance or loan or gift from the general fund to Bethesda to keep the bond coverage, that really ought to be repaid. Silver Spring back in the late 90s was on fumes, the PLD, because Silver Spring was pretty much dead. And to keep the parking district going back then, the county forwarded $6 million in general funds then, which in today's dollars is at least double that. But that was paid back over a number of years and without interest, but it was paid back. So there's that burden too that Bethesda has, which isn't really showing up. And secondly, another thing to think about is several years ago now, we eliminated the parking district tax. I mean, the reason why we have parking lot districts is because there was a tax. There still is a tax. We've set it at zero. But the idea was in the past that the parking districts were paid for by two sets of folks, by users, people who drive in and pay the fee, but also by the businesses that were having the county provide the parking that otherwise the county code requires them to pay for. So for the last several years, we've had the situation where if a new business comes to Bethesda, they don't have to provide any parking for themselves at all. It's their choice because it's on the county to provide it. And so it might be worthwhile, not now, not for FY22, but in this longer look at the PLDs to think about reestablishing an actual parking tax which still is allowed in the law. You wouldn't have to change the law. You just actually have to put in an amount. And that would be a much more stable source of revenue, frankly, than the fees. The fees go up and down depending on pandemics, the economy, whatever. The property tax doesn't. It's pretty stable. And I'm not sure whether or not, with the change in the charter limit, whether or not the concern about the parking tax contributing to the charter limit makes a difference anymore. We'd have to look into that. So I guess this is a long way of saying, no, I think we should go with the executive on these rate increases, these fare increases, and the hour increases. Just keep watching this. And as I think Chris mentioned earlier, we look at these every year. And in fact, you can make the adjustments during the course of the year. Even if 6 months from now it looks like things are really not doing well, we could change it again. It's not optimal because there's bureaucratic costs for changing the meters and everything like that, but it's still doable. So that would be I think our recommendation is to stick with what the executive is recommending.
I guess we know that's your recommendation. That's what you provided, but I think we got to come up with something different. You go beyond getting back to zero. You kind of go beyond what is the minimal increase to just have no deficit. Why can't we?
Well, the reserve policy is we're supposed to be at 25%. And we're talking about, even with these fare and rate increases, we're 5%, and which is not good at all. And of course, you cannot be negative. I guess if you want us to work on this some more, I did think I should have mentioned at the very beginning of the work session, is figuring that we wouldn't necessarily get through everything today. We have another work session scheduled for TNA next Friday, the 7th, to come back to what you don't finish today. But leave it up to the committee as to what you want to do with this. But that's our recommendation.
Okay.
Mary?
Yes, thank you. I did want to just mention that I think.
I think maybe it's Josie or Josie, your phone might be on, or someone's got a device and a laptop on. Just please, everyone mute other than Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a couple comments. I agree with Glenn that this is really something we need to build our way back from. And I honestly don't think these rate increases are going to keep people from going to Bethesda for dinner. I think that at this point, I think it's premature to think we could necessarily count on the availability of the federal money. I think the first sort of tranche of that federal money ended up being pretty committed. And I will tell you, this was a scramble this year to deal with these problems with the PLD. And this was not the year we wanted to be giving a general fund, transfer, but we did it out of an absolute need to make sure we maintain those bond rating covenants. And I think that we should just not be putting ourselves in a position of being that close. I think modest rate increases can help protect against that.
And we did spend $88 million on differential pay.
I know.
Plenty of funds for this if we had followed, but maybe the state has done. Okay, well, let's see what my colleagues have to say here.
Councilmember Glass.
I appreciate the comments that Councilmember Reamer just shared, and this being my third budget on the council, the last 2 years we've had these conversations, and I have expressed concern about the PLD system. It has shown over the last 2 years that it was not a sustainable model in this time and day. And that has been exacerbated and blown out of the water by the pandemic, for sure. So we need to figure this out. And I understand that we don't have the time to do that within this budget, but we have to set this straight moving forward. I'm not offering a proposal right now because there's lots of ways to think about it, but this isn't working. And so I have some just general questions, quite frankly. You know, we know that this year has been traumatic in so many different ways, but what has, aside from the financial landscape, and you shared what the hit has been in this fiscal year in the parking lot districts, but I'm just curious, looking forward, what the thoughts are with a return to normal, whatever that might mean. Clearly, our online stores, you know, are taking off. We want people to go back and eat and go back and shop in brick and mortar. All members of this committee have actively engaged, you know, downtown Silver Spring, the Peterson Company, to reopen, you know, Ellsworth Drive, and that was collective advocacy by all three of us to make sure that we have a walkable street where people weren't, you know, parking for free on Ellsworth Drive. But I'm just curious, you know, what the expectation is moving forward.
Well, I'll give a little bit of perspective on that, Councilmember Glass. Each of these districts is very different in the demand characteristics within them, and that's why the rate proposals and hours of enforcement at the moment aren't uniform. In Bethesda, a large portion of the PLD inventory is used to support commuting to the adjacent office environment. It's used for parking of residential vehicles, and probably to a larger extent than the other PLDs, used for weekend and evening parking for shopping and dining. In Silver Spring, the mix is a little bit different. There's, again, all of those uses are present, but there's a larger component of the PLD inventory that's used for civic function and used for WMATA commuting. And as the packet indicates, Silver Spring had the largest reduction in utilization and revenue generation of the three. Wheaton is yet again an entirely different environment. The lots and garages are used to support mostly small retail and convenience businesses. I don't think you have as much regional draw for dining and shopping in the PLD facilities in Wheaton. Obviously, there's a large regional mall in Wheaton, and that has its own characteristics. And the dynamic has changed, or will change, very dramatically with the higher population count in the Wheaton office building that opened mid-pandemic, and still county workforce isn't there. So if we look at the pre-pandemic picture, we were essentially fully occupied in Bethesda with the implementation of the development of the Bethesda master plan, which has been rapidly occurring. In Wheaton, we are expecting to be almost fully utilized with the occupancy of the Wheaton office building plus the existing commercial support use. And there are other different residential pressures in Wheaton, with people choosing to use the PLD facilities overnight rather than more expensive parking in their own buildings. And in Silver Spring, we have an environment where we're expecting longer term surplus of parking because there's a lot of parking there. And some uses like Park and Planning headquarters have moved to Wheaton, in the residential and commercial building that will replace it will have more of its own parking. But we're seeing a lot of interest in redevelopment in some of these parcels too. So I think it will be very difficult to give a longer term perspective on the recovery of parking utilization and longer distance transit ridership, like the WMATA discussion we had earlier, before the end of this calendar year, once we get schools back in normal operation and, you know, people's overall obligations return to something closer to what they were before. But we will see an impact from telecommuting, as Dr. Orlin has pointed out, that will take some longer time in economic recovery to fill that capacity that, with new workers or new population. So I hope that's helpful as an overall perspective, Councilmember Glass. And it's not scientific. This is based on just my own experience and having watched this over the last year.
No, it is very helpful. And I think it helps frame why all three are different, right? And we're not taking necessarily a unified approach because the residents and visitors and business community is all different. So thank you. I really do appreciate that. But Ms. Beck, I want to go back to the comment that you just made. Talk about or restate the concern regarding our bond rating and the need here to be able to, what you're proposing in order to maintain our bond rating.
We have particular standards that we are obligated to meet in terms of revenues and their ability to cover certain debt ratios. And those are strictly part of the bond covenants. And we don't want to put ourselves in a position of not meeting those. And I think in general, that's something we've talked over the years about rethinking the PLDs. And, there's been talk about merging them into one big kind of entity. But one of the complexities is we do have outstanding bonds, and there are requirements that relate to those. And so anything we do, we either would have to pay off all those bonds and be in a position to do that, or we have to still abide by those kinds of agreements. So that adds another layer to this that makes it a little more complicated.
It certainly does make it more complicated, but I appreciate you articulating what those complications are. There are advocates and engaged citizens who are trying to portray this as a very simple situation, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with debt, we're dealing with market rates, we're dealing with a bunch of other things, and so I'm not quite sure. I'm going to turn it back over to the chair. I'm not quite sure what the discussion point is now, but those are the questions I had to help further frame this conversation and where we.
Thank you. Ms. Beck, on the bond payments, I do understand we have to make them and that we have prior obligations. I don't understand how that would, assuming that we continue to make them, how that fact would stand in the way of a creation of a countywide PLD with 3 different zones and or more and 3 different sets of rates. The way we now operate it, but just with the one single bank account, there's no reason a countywide PLD couldn't make the bond payments to meet our obligations in Bethesda, correct?
I think we would have to be in touch with the bondholders. This is not my area of expertise in terms of talking to the bond rating agencies about this. I'm not sure if Nancy is on from finance, but I do know that it's, certain revenues in the Bethesda PLD have been pledged as a payment stream. And if we were somehow to do anything that would appear to dilute the availability of those revenues, that would need to be discussed with the bond rating agencies and would need to be approved. And I do not know the ins and outs of how that could happen, but what we have discussed in the past is that we would either have to wait until bonds were paid off or pay them off ahead of time and arrange something else.
Right, but we probably wouldn't pay them off ahead of time, as you say. We would subsume them into it. I mean, they're guaranteed by the county's bond rating and our credit, right? I mean, the Bethesda PLD doesn't have its own rating, correct?
They are issued based on the revenues of that PLD.
Right.
I don't know if Nancy's here, but I can get you more.
We don't have to dwell on it, but if that was all, those 3 sources of revenue were all subsumed into one larger one, I mean, I can't imagine where there's any additional risk to the bond rating agency. It all is an obligation of the county government.
Okay. Nancy just sent me something saying legal documents would have to direct this. She's saying bigger could be better, but we need to work it through with the legal authorization and covenants.
Sure. Okay. Well, anyway, we're not going to make that structural change, right. But I'm just flagging that as an option that I don't think is. I don't see any reason for us to be held back on that because of our obligations to pay off our debts in Bethesda. Okay, on Councilmember Reamer's question about the use of federal funds on this one-time, unique, unusual hit on our PLDs, is there any reason in the use of ARP funds, that they couldn't be used for PLD deficits?
I don't believe so. I'd want to check with Josh Waters and county attorney. I mean, it is being used indirectly, so I think probably if there's a way to do it.
Right. They are, I thought, quite forgiving. I don't think they fenced off PLDs in federal law. Okay. Third, can you elaborate on is it just the bond payments you referenced, or when there was the comment about the unique financial costs in Bethesda? What are those?
I'm sorry, I don't remember saying that exact phrase. I can't remember the context.
I should be clear. I think, Chris, you may have referenced the unique higher financial costs of the PLDs in Bethesda.
No, it is debt service. It's
just debt service. Just properties we've bought that we have to pay off where those garages are.
Yes, that's the principal.
Right. Not more complicated than I thought. Okay, thanks. Can we get a breakdown of your 48 FTEs? And can you comment at all, like how much is that down from when you had parking lot attendance or parking garage attendance?
I'll have to refer to Joe's. I don't have that detail, but I'm sure he's familiar with it.
Sure. Currently, we have 8. I hope you can hear me because I'm on my. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Currently, we have 8 vacancies, and we've been holding that so that number is down, and that's part of our savings as we're trying to recover from this pandemic. But the attendance and all of those services are contracted services, so we've reduced those expenses too to meet current levels of demand.
Okay, and that's for meter enforcement for collecting fines, right?
Correct.
And what else? Can you? How are the 48 FTEs used?
Mr. Hucker, in the packet, the chapter that is starting on page 2 shows the programs and the associated FTEs with each of those programs. So you see what's associated with the general administration, what's associated with operations. Joe's, what it may be helpful to do is provide some sense of the 39.5 FTEs in operations. How many of those are, maintenance versus the capital engineering side of things? Most of the service, cashiering, meter collection, enforcement, all of those things are contracted out and are generally not reflected in the FTEs except for the overall management of those services. So Joe's, I don't know if you can speak to operations side of things a little bit, where the bulk of those are.
That's correct. So there's 2, operations and maintenance. So the maintenance team, I'm going to try and see if I can pull up the org chart here really quick, but hang on just a second.
I mean, thank you, Emil. It surprises me there's only 4 involved in parking enforcement, and that I would think we'd need more, but I'm not recommending that. But 39 in operations, yeah, I'd love to understand.
And again, that's because that function is primarily handled by contract. And so we have very little that's actually, working with the contractor to process the ticket, and basically a program manager or project manager.
Okay, so can you help us understand what all the operations personnel do?
Sure. So under parking operations, we have different programs. There's a security program that we have essentially one person that manages that program. That service is contracted out. Then we have an enforcement and citation management program. We have 2 people that are part of that program. And again, most of the services are contracted out. So these staff members are really just managing those contractors. Then we have garage and contract management, where we have 1 person that's in-house staff. And again, the garage management is all contracted out. We have some administrative staff that deal with correspondence and working with citizens, and that's just 1 person. We have a revenue processing unit, where we count our revenues that come in. We have 5 people in that unit, and that again is not just parking. It's parking and mass transit. So ride-on revenues used to come there too. So that was also being counted there. Currently, that is not happening because ride-on's not accepting is free. And then we have a meter operation shop, which we have 5 people in there, and they're essentially the people that go out and repair parking meters, all the payment machines that we have all over in all 3 PLDs. So that's the operation.
Right. All right. That's helpful. Thank you, Jose. How many? So 48 FTEs for the county, but how many contract employees do you think they are managing that?
Probably, and I have to go back and check. If I had to estimate, it would be about maybe 100 total, because we have enforcement, we have security services, we have janitorial services, we have citation processing, payment processing. So yeah, there's, and I can get back with the exact number, but it's a fairly large number.
So how many of the operations people are in contract management of the 39?
Just one.
Just one?
Yes. Is managing.
Managing the 100 contracts. Okay. Only one of the 39 is managing the 100 contracts?
No, these contractors are all for different programs. So like I said, the security program has its own contract manager. The enforcement program has its own contract manager. But the contracts for those is just one person managing all those contracts. The procurement contracts, not necessarily the program.
Yeah. But how many of your 39 operations staff are overseeing the contractors?
4.
4?
2, 5. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure where all my colleagues are on this. I'll just say, as I feel like I say every year, I feel like we make, as a body, bad policy during the budget season. And in this case, we have an operation that has had structural problems on a multi-year basis, and that I don't think that, to Mary's point, I think we need to build back to a more sustainable revenue growth for each of the funds. There's no question. The question is, A, would we benefit from a better structure that we're not going to put together today? And B, is this the right year to begin the building back when our local economy's been so hammered by this unique economic circumstance this year? I saw Councilmember Friedson's letter where he doesn't want the rates to go up in Bethesda. I think it would be difficult to provide that kind of relief just in Bethesda and not do the same thing in the even harder hit communities in Silver Spring and Wheaton. So it's difficult for me to support the increases this year as much as I know they're needed, and we need sustainability in the whole system. It feels a little bit like we try to put some Band-Aids every year in a budget hearing for an hour or two on a system that needs structural changes for sustainable thing, and that it's sort of based on a number of decisions that aren't always in. Mary?
I know one of the issues that we looked at when we were trying to figure out how to deal with the reduced revenues was how to cut costs. And I'll tell you, it got ugly very fast. And, are we going to just close whole garages? Are we going to break contracts? I mean, it was very, very hard. And a number of the things that we did with the CIP, those are very short-term solutions. we cannot keep delaying elevator refurbishments or those kinds of projects. So, you know, if we're not willing to raise the rates to, I mean, Bethesda's been in trouble for a while. We should have never been in such a bleak position to begin with. And
Bethesda's rates
so,
years ago, pre-COVID.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Proposed raising Bethesda's rates. They've always been artificially low pre-COVID when the economy was.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay.
I'll suggest two things. I mean, we, as Mary mentioned, we did go through a very detailed exercise of facility evaluation and service evaluation. And we've taken this to the edge of, I think, an acceptable level of service given the sorts of unpleasant things that can happen in these facilities. So we really don't have the scope to reduce the services, and most of the facilities are intertwined in such a way that it's not really advisable to close them. So there's not a lot of scope here for cost savings, as I think is probably clear from this. I think despite it being a little confusing how we're organized, that is very efficiently operated internally. And the use of contractors has given us some ability to scale services that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So those have been taken advantage of. There is a slight difference in that these rate increases were proposed. There's nothing new about them in two of the PLDs, whereas the other one is accelerated. So there is a little bit of variability there, but again, you know, in some way the fund has to be solvent, whether it's through the fees generated through the parking activity or some other means.
Colleagues, what's your pleasure?
Well, I mean, I don't think the executive sent us a good proposal. As I said, I think the executive had fewer options at his disposal due to his general fiscal management. And I don't think it's, you know, but you know, that happened. And I would like to see some alternative options here. I think we could adjust the assumption about ongoing parking. I think we could find out what a ratio of you know, ARPA or general revenue funds would be to you know, to parking rates. You know, maybe going for like 20-80. You know, 20% of the gap closed with rate, 80 with ARPA. I mean, I just think we need some more options. You know, I think this is going to be a broad theme for us. I think we're going to find there's a bunch of areas where we're not able to do what we wanted to do easily, and we're going to be struggling through that. So, you know, it's frustrating to be in this point, but you know, I'm not going to support the executive's recommendation. I'd be happy to consider some different ones.
So I'll hop in. So I think the use of American Rescue Plan funds should be considered, quite frankly, because if we're using those funds to plug gaps that have occurred over the last year in other areas of county government, then this clearly applies just based on the presentation that we've had. That said, there are systemic problems that need to be fixed in the years beyond. And so maybe the ARPA funding is the stopgap measure that will give us the impetus to really fix this so that we don't have to have this groundhog conversation year after year. And so whether the motion is to request a new proposal for the work session that we have on hold for next week, or whenever it is, if it goes to full council, whatever the proposal is, I would support that.
And I think I may have not mixed up, but not separated the two issues. I guess I'm I'm okay with increasing the hours of enforcement more than I am with the increasing the hourly rate at this time. I mean, I think I agree with Hans. I'd like to see staff come back with a few more options, including using our money for some of the cost potentially, and maybe you could approach it. I'm sure you'll have additional better ideas, but you could approach it as we did with bus fares, where maybe we can tell the community that they're going to see, they're not going to see increased rates for 6 months or some period. And we could vote for, if it's the pleasure of the committee, the increased rates to provide the sustainability that you're looking for later in FY22 or in FY23. But right now, I agree with my colleagues. I'm not so psyched about the rate increases in the middle of this environment.
Okay, what I'm hearing is that we should come back with this next Friday. Given the deadline for packets, we may not be able to get to you that much ahead of time, but we'll try. The deadline will be Tuesday. That doesn't give us much time, but maybe Wednesday or even early Thursday. One of the concerns we'll have to look at is several of you mentioned ARPA, is that the executive sent over. He's made an assumption as to how much we can fairly much get guaranteed in the way of ARPA funds, which is about $34 million. There may be more coming beyond that, but we just don't know. The question is, what should we be assuming right now for ARPA? Right now, all of that ARPA funds that he's proposing is being used in the transit area, which we'll be covering, I guess, also next Friday. So if it, in fact, we're limited to that $34 million, then any money that goes into the parking districts will come out of the transit projects. Unless we can assume more ARPA funds than what the executive's assuming. And so that's something we'll have to explore with folks who know a lot more about ARPA than I do.
The ARPA funds you're referring to are just the mass transit ARPA funds. There are a broader suite of ARPA funds.
Okay.
And if I can just clarify on one thing, there are the two pots of money, as Chris said, and the general money is what we have already allocated $6 million essentially to help Bethesda. What I don't know is in the first tranche if there will be more money available. So we'll get clarification on that and the timing of the second tranche, because it may not be available in 22, and that's part of what we need to check. May already be spoken for, unless council wants to use it differently than the executive has proposed, and that's your prerogative.
Right, it is. I also just had the question about expansion of the enforcement hours in the morning. Do we get a lot of revenue at 7 a.m. by enforcing meters then? Moving from 9 to 7? I have no idea how many cars are there before 7.
People going to the gym?
I wouldn't have thought that was a big revenue stream, but I'm not opposed to it.
So the enforcement hours, that was just to bring it in line. So typically our off-street facilities everywhere start at 7 a.m. and on-street, where you have sometimes rush hour restrictions and things like that, it starts at 9.
Right.
So we were just kind of bringing everything to be consistent.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So, Glenn, Carlos.
Mr. Hucker, if I can just chime in very quickly. When we developed the rate proposals that were in the cash flow models to begin with, all of those were coordinated or consulted with the various chambers. When we reached out to Bethesda this year specifically, we didn't get specific feedback on what exactly to do. What they were very clear is they did not want to see rates implemented on Saturdays. So, that is a constraining factor, but these proposals are discussed with them. So in terms of the hours versus raising the rates, in Silver Spring, what's proposed in 22 is the second year of a 3-year phase in. that was proposed and consulted with the chamber there.
Yeah, I mean, when we all discussed that 3-year phase in, obviously nobody thought COVID was on its way, but apparently the Silver Spring Chamber isn't satisfied with your proposal because they put in a letter in opposition.
Agree. I think given the pandemic situation, they would prefer to not see go in what was included in the original proposals for this year. I'm only making the point that these things, somebody had said, I disagree with the hours, or that not raising the rates but increasing the hours. Those were done in consultation with the chambers at the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that the priority in Bethesda was remaining free on Saturdays.
Sure.
Right. Got it. Okay. So everybody's clear on what to do next, and we can move on. Dr. Orlin, Mr. Camacho?
Well, we're scheduled to finish in 5 minutes. So I'm wondering whether we should just halt for a halt now, or and come back with everything on Friday next week. It's up to you.
Remind me, are either one of these really quick?
No. The general fund might be quicker. We could try skip number 5 and try, but even that might take some time. We can try. And try to do number 5. Number 4 is going to take a long time.
Yes. All right.
Let's try to number 5. Okay, so I'll just skip to the recommendations. How's that? There's a lot of information here about racial equity, social justice, answers to questions from the departments, and also I had some thoughts about how to evaluate that, but we can do that at a later time. In terms of the operating budget, I'm recommending agreeing with the executive. No changes. There's basically the operating budget program for the general fund departments or sections of DOT. It's a reduction in scope once you take into account the cost of living increases from the employees, the negotiated cost of livings. Relatively minor, but still a reduction. So otherwise, I'm recommending approval of the operating budget as proposed. In the CIP, there's a few things. First of all, in the bikeway program minor projects, the executive is recommending accelerating $500,000 from FY 23 to 22. The 22 money would be used to pay for the Marinelli Road shared use the cycle track between Rockville Pike and Neville Street. That was actually supposed to be built in FY 19, but it had to be postponed because Pepco was doing work along there. And that $500,000 was used for another bikeway along Emery Lane, which was running over budget. So this is the executive trying to put the money back in for that project, which would have been done 3 years ago. But by doing that, he also reduced the amount of money in FY 23, which impacts the Dr. Bird shared use path and reduces the amount for it by $500,000. My recommendation is to add that $500,000 in FY 23 so as not to affect any of the other sub-projects within this program. Because what will happen next year is it'll be the same thing again. The money is going to be needed for Dr. Bird, and then some other things can be delayed. So the CIP already will be put on the correct track right now. And so that's my first recommendation. Maybe we should do this one at a time. Is there any objection to that?
I think we're good.
Okay, the executive is recommending delaying 3 bikeway projects. Executives going back to 30 years I've been at the council, routinely, when they get to a situation with shorter money, they delay projects that the council had introduced because it's not their priorities, understandable. He's done that here. The MacArthur Boulevard Bikeway, he's delaying it by 2 years. And it's already been delayed by 4 years. Well, it's been already delayed by 2 years. So this may be a 4-year delay from when it was initially put in the CIP. Goldsboro Road is recommending delaying 2 years. It's already been delayed 1 year, so it'll be a 3-year delay from when it was introduced. And the Bowie Mill Road Bikeway, delaying it by 1 year. Just went in the CIP last year, so delaying it 1 year. I'm recommending not delaying any of those, at least at this time. Again, all accounts come into play when CIP reconciliation comes around. So we may have to actually end up delaying 1 or more of these, maybe hopefully not all of them, hopefully not to the same degrees the executive did, but as a starting point, just honor basically what these schedules were in the approved CIP. So any questions about those 3?
Just want to say thank you for that recommendation. I concur, and let's keep these on track if we possibly can.
Mr. Glass, are you okay with that?
I am, yes.
Okay. Moving on, highway services projects. The executives actually recommend accelerating a little bit of money in the in two resurfacing projects and in the sidewalk and curb replacement project. It's not new money, but it's not more money, but it's moving it from FY24 to 22 or 23 to 22. This often happens when you're reconciling a CIP. You might find a little fiscal space in an earlier year. And basically what OMB is doing is what we do at the council, is that there may be a space we can make things easier in the later years by moving a little bit of money forward. It's always good to spend money on these projects earlier because we're way behind in all of these areas, resurfacing residential streets, primary arterial streets, and sidewalk curb replacement. And so I'm recommending agreeing with the executive on all three of these accelerations. Again, though, subject to CIP reconciliation. I should probably say that on everything we do, but as a starting point, concur with that. Any thoughts? Okay. I'm assuming silence is gold on that one. One thing that I do want to mention is, and this came in yesterday, you probably saw the memo from Mr. Juwando. He's recommending two things. First of all, adding money to the pedestrian safety program PDF in the CIP, adding $200,000 to it in FY22. And he'd like to be able to add the same amount in the later years, but he recognizes he can do that next year in the FY23-28 CIP. So for now, just for FY22, and that would be for more sidewalk improvements along the Safe Routes to Schools program, basically double what the county is able to do in FY22 compared to what's in the existing budget. He would also add $150,000 to the operating budget in support of Safe Routes to Schools for the educational programs and other operating needs from that program.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes.
Glenn, I've talked to Director Conklin about this. I've been in touch with Councilmember Juwando about this. I think it's a proposal with a lot of merit. I've brought it up before. I think we ought to have I think we ought to have an approach that is as cost effective as possible and fits into the larger structure around Safe Routes to School and the prioritization we have currently. So I had talked to Director Conklin and Will about dealing with this item next week, so we could have a little bit of time to put together a sort of more proposal.
Okay.
If I can just also add, so the Vision Zero component of the budget was put on the consent calendar, and I think I had reached out to colleagues and to Mr. Orland about having a follow-up conversation, and clearly this is all part of that bigger conversation about Vision Zero and how we fund it and how we program it.
Yes, I basically talked to Wade already. We don't have a date for it yet, but we're sitting a full council briefing on Vision Zero, on the new plan is out there for public comment right now, as well as everything else they've done in the last year or so. So the last briefing you had as full council was January of 2020, 15 months ago. So we'll have that this summer. Don't know what date yet, but either June or July. Right. Okay, so we'll bring this one back, Mr. Hucker, next Friday. And the very last thing I guess on this is that, and this is the addendum really, the committee already talked with the GO committee on the White Flint taxing district situation. And in the addendum, what happens is OMB has sent over 3 revised PDFs for the 3 White Flint transportation projects, White Flint East, White Flint West, and White Flint Workaround, which reflects what the committees agreed to back in the middle of March when you met. Basically, it shows $15 million for GO bond proceeds as a funding source for the White Flint West Workaround project. It reflects the slight acceleration of funds that have actually happened already in White Flint West Workaround, White Flint Workaround, which is there's some money in FY21 that's actually was spent in FY20, but it does not include language about assuming that councils repealed and replaced the 2010 resolution, because you didn't do that. So I'm recommending approval of the PDFs as revised in the addendum. And you'll be talking about this again as a full council next week. I think I think Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Colleagues, is that all fine?
I guess this is like a status quo kind of point. You're not recommending something that's different from our previous conversation.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we did number 5.
Great. Do you want to do number 6?
I don't have a number 6. What do you have as number 6?
Motor pool NDA?
Council President Puckett, that's one of mine.
Oh, hi, Naeem. I didn't know you were there. Sorry.
Sorry.
One item on the consent calendar. No, the motor pool NDA it's pretty non-controversial. It funds new vehicle acquisitions to support county operating programs. For FY22, we have 2 vehicles for HHS. One of which is supporting is a mobile health clinic van to provide health services in underserved areas of the county. Another vehicle, $27,000, is to support the crisis outreach team, and the third vehicle is to the fire and rescue service. That is $60,000 to support a paramedic chase car to support provide additional life support services. So, council staff recommends approval as submitted by the county executive.
3 good causes. I bet we're good with all those. Colleagues? Chase car, mobile health, mobile crisis units. All right.
Great.
What's not to love? Naeem, you're very persuasive.
Thank you.
These are electric vehicles.
I don't believe so. No, they're conventional vehicles.
Okay.
I don't know where the technology is on mobile on the mobile health, but the other 2, I bet there's something out there. Certainly a chase car. Anyway, that's a procurement discussion you can look into. All right, so are we good? Carlos, Glenn, you're muted, Glenn.
Yes. So for next Friday's session, just you would like to see some alternative options in terms of how
the PLD.
Yeah, we can fill the gap.
Have a meeting and talk about it.
Okay.
Same thing.
And we'll have
Safe Routes
and with Safe Routes and all the entire transit budget and CIP amendments.
Oh yeah,
we'll do all that. Yeah, that.
Right.
That's going to take a while. Okay. And it's Friday. It's Thursday. It's Friday afternoon at 1:30 is when the meeting is.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Yes. We're lucky to be working with Congressman Brown to request federal funding for the improvements to the Purple Line project that he mentioned. Many of our projects improve bicycle and pedestrian safety. They also improve infrastructure changes to our bus rapid transit to make that expanded and function more effectively. We have some